Hello, my name is Jorge Young. I'm the instructor for MA 320. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to demonstrate how to construct a histogram, a relative frequency bar graph, and also a cumulative frequency line graph. So the first thing is I'm going to just quickly introduce this data. So I just have 30 data points, just randomly selected between 0 and 18. And then I have certain information from this particular data set. So I found the minimum, the maximum, I found the range, I also found the width. And if you recall, the width for my classes when I create a frequency distribution is the range divided by how many classes I want. So in this case, it was 18 divided by 5, which it came out to be 3.6, and then I rounded that up to 4. Using that information, I created, excuse me, I created my 5 class limits, so 0 to 3, 4 to 7, 8 to 11, 12 to 15, and then 16 to 19. Then I created my class boundaries, which is subtracting zero point 0.5 from the lower class limit and then adding 0.5 to the upper class limit. And I did that for each one of the classes. Then I found the frequency, how many data points are in each class. And of course, like I said before, I had 30 data points. Then I found the relative frequency for each class, simply dividing the frequency by the total number of data points. And then of course, that all should add up to 1. So the first thing that I'm going to demonstrate is how to construct a histogram using the data analysis toolpack from Excel. Now, if you don't have the data analysis toolpack, what you have to do is you have to click on options and then click on add-ins. And then you want to make sure if it's not installed, this analysis toolpack will be here in the inactive. Now, so you would highlight it, and then down here in the manage, you just click on go. And then make sure that the radio button is clicked for the one that you want to add, which in this case is the analysis toolpack. So I click on OK. The next thing is I click on data, and then data analysis. It should appear here on the right hand side. And so you have a lot of different options here, but the one that we're looking for is histogram. So I'm going to go ahead and click on histogram. And then your input range is simply going to be your raw data. So this is going to be my raw data here. And so I went ahead and, so let's say I had to highlight it. All I did was just highlight my data, click on it, and it's there. The next thing is that your bin range, what you want to do for your bin range is you want to choose your upper class boundaries. And then you want to make sure that you click on chart output, and then we're going to go ahead and put this in a new worksheet, and I'm going to tell you why we want to put it in a new worksheet. But once you have all that information, you want to click on OK, and then what happens is Excel creates the histogram for me. Now in this case, what's going to happen is she's going to go ahead and delete that legend, and then we're going to delete this more row. And what happens is that we have to delete the entire row in order for Excel to take it off of the histogram. If you just delete the 2 cells, it's going to remain there. The next thing is we want to click on one of the bars, make sure that all of the bars are highlighted. And then we're going to go ahead and right click and we're going to format data series. The gap width, we want it to be at 0%. And then now it's a histogram, as before it was just a bar graph. The next thing is that we want to click on the paint. Now, I don't know which version you have, so it might differ slightly. And what we want is we don't want any fill, but our borders, we do want a solid line. We're just going to go ahead and make it black. And that's our histogram. The next thing is that you want to make sure that you label all parts of your histogram correctly. So here are my bins, which is my upper class boundaries and the frequency for each one, which is very similar to what we had in our raw data. So now the next thing is that we're going to go ahead and construct just a relative frequency bar graph. So in order for me to do that, all I do is I just want to highlight my 5 classes, my relative frequency. Then I click on insert, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on the first bar graph. And then I'm just going to do a couple of things to this. I'm not going to change the title, but just remember that you do have to have a title. But I'm going to put my titles in my horizontal and vertical axes. The first thing is I want to change my data, because this is not actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What it is I want to put my upper class boundaries. So what you do is if you click on it, you notice how just the numbers, or the axis, is highlighted. The next thing is I click on select data, and I want to edit the horizontal axis. So I click on my horizontal axis, and in here I just highlight my upper class boundaries, very similar to what I did for the bin range for the histogram. Click OK twice, and now it's the data that I want. Now the next thing is I'm just going to go ahead and put a title. So again, depending on the version that you have, it might differ slightly. So here what I'm going to do is axis title, add chart element, axis title, primary horizontal, and then again I'm going to just call it class boundaries. The next thing is I'm going to go ahead and do the vertical. I'm just going to go ahead and call that relative frequency. So that's how you construct a relative frequency bar graph. The next thing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find a cumulative frequency for this particular data set. So here I just highlight the cell, I click on equal. I'm just going to click on the first cell because the first one is going to be equal to that first limit or that first class relative frequency. The next thing is I'm going to add the previous one to the next class relative frequency. And now I've just added the first two classes. Well, if I highlight the second one that I did, which here you see the formula, you notice my icon goes from white to just a black plus. Now if I left click and I just drag, it actually populates the cells for me. So this is my cumulative frequency, and of course it makes sense because my last class should have 100% of all of my data points. So then the next thing is we just can go ahead and easily just construct a line graph. So we highlight the data, click on insert, click on the line graph, and just going to go do a simple line graph. And again, we're going to switch to the data because we don't want the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want actually the upper class boundary. So highlight that axis, select data, edit the horizontal, click OK twice. And the next thing you would have to do is put the titles in the horizontal and vertical axis. So now, this is how you can do it step by step. The other way would be that Excel can actually does it for you. Again, click on data, excuse me, then data analysis, histogram. Now we have all the information that we need, but the only thing that we're going to do differently is we're going to go ahead and click on cumulative percentage, and we want it in a new worksheet. And then once we do that, we click on OK. So all of the data is the same as the histogram. So this one here, again, we delete the legend. We delete that extra more row that it creates. The next thing is we want to go ahead and delete the histogram because we don't want the histogram. And now this is a cumulative frequency line graph. Next thing here is we can just go ahead and change that from bins to class boundaries. Of course, this is not a histogram. And then the last thing that I would do is we don't want it to go to 120%. So if we just double click on it, and then the maximum here in the first one, we just change it to 1. And that's all. That's how you create a cumulative frequency line graph. It's how you create a histogram, a relative frequency bar graph, and also the cumulative frequency line graph, but doing it step by step. Thank you.